Good morning, MMTs. 5/5/2014, 8:21 a.m. Markets have almost been open. What we are going to cover here is we're going to take a look at the IUXX NASDAQ 100. The NASDAQ 100 had a huge left elbow gap down. Then they came in and they bought NASDAQ 100 stocks from their same trends that had their left elbow gap downs. Now, the fear indicator, and I want people to see the VXN 3-minute fear indicator. And on that opening bell, you can see that the fear indicator went straight up here to the top on that open. And then the fear indicator came straight back down to its previous day's close on Friday. The lesson to be learned about the volatility in the NASDAQ 100, both the fear indicator and the actual NASDAQ 100 index, and we've been buying puts on them, you can clearly see that left elbow, and you can see on that opening bell, what did they do? That lower high frequency model came in, ran that straight up here again, and there is the top being patterned right here. Here it is. This is where this whole sell started right here. It all started back over here. And we came straight down to here and we rallied up on today. They took that trade, and NASDAQ 100 stocks also had the same pattern. They came off of their left elbow gap downs and went straight up. So once again, we are going to measure the fear and the gaps between the two. They gapped the fear up, they brought it back down. That shows you that people were buying the dips. On a 3-minute here, NASDAQ 100 is printing up higher. You can clearly see that. So basically, equities bounced off of their bottom. Otherwise, you couldn't have got the NASDAQ 100. So within the NASDAQ 100, you had a certain basket of equities that bounced from their left elbow gap downs. I'm going to show this NASDAQ 100 right here. And I'm going to open this up, and I'm going to go show you right now what stocks had the biggest intraday range. That this NASDAQ 100 has had a $42.40 range in both directions. That's higher volatility. Price line on the open, $27. BIIB, famous stock of all biotechs, 1025. Your Netflix had a negative, and these are the gap open or down. And we could clearly see on the open where the left elbow gaps came down in the NASDAQ 100. Netflix, $9.38 range. Bid and ask, $42. The open was $3.38. The high was $3.45. The low was $3.36, of course, and $341.80. Apple, left elbow gap down on that opening bell, $8.74 range. Bid $5.96, ask $5.96. They opened at $5.90, and once again, those NASDAQ 100 stocks that came up off of their bottom did the same thing across the board. So the leadership within the NASDAQ 100 is that all of these negative left elbow gap downs were bought immediately. And one of the ones that I'll show here is how the Netflix trade worked on this 2-hour opening bell. We gap down and we come straight right back up off of those bottoms. This is what it looks like. This is the overall trend in this. And we can clearly see that left elbow gap down, and we can clearly see how they ran that straight up to the top and then just dropped $4 off of the high on Netflix. We'll go to another one. We'll go to Amazon. Now, within the Amazon trade itself, we had this left elbow gap down. They came in. It's in the NASDAQ 100. It's also in the S&P. They ran that thing straight up, and you can see that high-frequency algorithm, and we come down here, and each one of these lines are 41 pennies per 16th. And you can clearly see, just like all of these got the left elbow, there was a buy script on the opening bell and a basket of the NASDAQ 100 stocks that I've shown. And the reason why we're going to get this down right now is because we'll take Tesla now. And we're going to look at Tesla now. And left elbow gap down, but this thing took off like a rocket with the high frequency model and went straight up here and has rolled over. So it's very important that every one of these stocks that are in the NASDAQ 100 and whatnot, they have the very same pattern. They also have that reversal volatility off of the highs in the first 2-hour tape. So here is another one that we're going to show you. We are going to show you the Baidu Trade as well. And you can clearly see that every one of these stocks had a left elbow gap down and then a run back up here, and now they're putting in their morning 2-hour ranges on the intraday. Another one that we would like to show you is LinkedIn. Now LinkedIn has dropped $100 off its all-time highs. Yes, you can see over here what we're going to show you is what today was. But this LinkedIn was up here at 163, and when LinkedIn was up at $250 and some change, we said that this thing was going to be miserable. And what they did today, you can clearly see that left elbow gap down in the NASDAQ 100, and then they put their tops in, and all this happened on that opening bell. Another one that we would like to show very clearly now is going to be Priceline. And Priceline is a stock that we had shorted with using put options. Priceline, you must know, left elbow gap down. It's in the S&P. It's in a lot of the indexes, NASDAQ 100, and straight right up with that reversal. And this is what that opening bell looks like for the new MMTs and the old MMTs. It doesn't matter how long you've been here. What does matter, though, is how that volatility is working in these names. Another one that we'll be very direct with is that we're going to show the Google trade. And we're going to show that Google had that left elbow gap down on the opening bell. And from that left elbow gap down in the NASDAQ 100, they shot it straight up and they pulled it back in here. And that's on GOOG, 3-minute opening bell. Most of the stocks that did this and whatnot were all left elbow, and here was all of your negative gap downs and whatnot. And then what they did was they bought that left elbow gap down and they ran the shorts out on the opening bell. That's exactly what they did, MMT. The trade that we are going to really focus on, I would like to point out once again, guys, about Celgene. And I would like to point out that left elbow on that opening bell. Now listen, this was a buy script across the board with negative pre-market data. And what it's showing is how that volatility is working on the left elbow gap down and then running straight up off of the bottoms, and it's right here. Another one that I would like to show all of my MMTs is the fear indicator. That is very important. So I'm going to put that together. Here we go with Big Bellwether, BIIB, Biogen. Left elbow gap down, and look at that left elbow. So that means that there was a basket of stocks in all of these key indexes that were bought, and the futures went straight up and equities went straight up right along with it. And you can see the whole pattern on this opening bell here and now. We are going to feature what we call the S&P 100 large cap. And you're going to see what these gap downs were. And you clearly have the ranges in that S&P 100. This is today's range. And remember, we've been open now for 2 hours and 1 minute. And every one of these left elbow gap downs were met with a buy. I'm going to show the small cap on the opening bell. And clearly, MMTs, clearly in the small cap arena, we've got the ranges here. We have the left elbow gap down in the small cap. And we got a complete beta ranges, Baker Hughes, Verts, and the beta is different than the other stocks in the NASDAQ 100. They follow it. is what I'm saying. And small cap follows big cap. So basically, they all came up off of the bottoms on this opening bell. Let's just take a look at the mid cap opening bell gaps. So here is the S&P mid cap. You got NVR. Gap opened down 41 points on NVR. The range on NVR is 32.54. Then you have the index itself, but you got your gaps in the mid cap, and they all in these indexes have all had a left elbow gap down. And you can see what these left elbow gap downs were. And you can see that 2-hour minute tape coming up off of their lows in these key indexes that we have. And one thing that we're going to show is the gold and silver. Now, gold and silver has been running in anticipation. See RGLD, there's not a lot going on in here with the miners, but nonetheless, we can see how narrow ranges that this is. So when we just take a look around, we can clearly say that we can go to the Dow Jones Transportation on the opening bell. This is what it looks like. And the range today in the DJT is 75-point handle movement. And there's a bid and ask in the transports and whatnot. When we take a look at the financials and the NASDAQ 100, these are the financials now. Too big to fail, how about that? Today's ranges are all in here in the financials. And this is in the first 2-hour openly bell. Now, the Dow Jones Industrial Average has had a 134-point range so far. The bid is 16.5 and the ask is there, but what I am going to show you is 16.3.77 right here. And that is the range in 2 hours. You can see the volatility in the Dow. You can see it clearly, MMTs. Now, let's go up here to the NASDAQ. We're going to show you a basket of stocks that are in the following. The biotech NBIX. Now look at BIIB. Left elbow gap down, RGN. These are the favorite stocks we've been buying, but look at the ranges. $10.80 here on BIIB, $8.87, $5.91 on Jazz, JAZZ, ALXN, ILMN. We covered these over the weekend. And Celgene also has a 3.97. So when we look across the broader part of these sectors, we can clearly see how that volatility is working. And another one that we would like to point out later and whatnot, no, we'll go ahead and point this out now. It's called the Russell 1000. And NVR, 32.5 price line. Of course, a lot of these stocks are in the Russell 1000 along in other key indexes. But look at the volatility of the 2-hour openly bell range. And it goes on and on and on. And what it tells us is one thing. They came in and bought that dip on that opening bell. And another thing that I'm going to be clear about is within the high volume NYSE stocks, I'm going to give you the intraday high count right now in that NYSE. As it populates, the high count CMG, VIPS, ACT, LinkedIn, all of the stocks that we trade are hitting an intraday morning intraday high count on the NYSE. Now, over in the NASDAQ composite, under the primary session, we can take a look at the intraday low count. These were your low opening bell on that open, but look at where they're at. Look at the ranges. Now, the high count, just the opposite end, we can see that the high count right now, intraday high count, in 2 hours, we can see the culprit. We can see the stocks, price line, all the ones that we trade. PCYC, that's been killed forever, back to $90. BIB, look at that. Look at that. So basically the high count was that left elbow gap down in U.S. equities. And, you know, once again, that's just how the opening bell has started. And we'll continue to see what the last hour or 2 hours of the market play out so that we can have our live video with our live trades. This way we can monitor whether it's a gap up, it would be a short, or a left elbow gap down. You come in, you buy it, and you let them run as long as they can. That is the opening bell and the conclusion at 8:37 a.m. Pacific Standard Time. Date is 5521 or 2014. 2 hours and 7 minutes of that opening bell, and we've covered it, so we have it